start by saying the BBC ship has undoubtedly found itself embroiled in choppy waters plenty of times over the recent years. Some scandals have undoubtedly been worse than others, but let you be the judge. Take a look and decide for yourself, my friends. The BBC, our public broadcaster, the most prized jewel in the country's media crown. Or is it? From sex abuse cases to rows over impartiality, the BBC has often found itself in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. Let's start with the obvious one, the shocking case of Jimmy Savile. The radio DJ and presenter was one of the country's biggest stars, with a career at the BBC spanning nearly half a century. Yet throughout this time, he used his position of power and influence to abuse hundreds of women and children. He hid his crimes until the scope of their depravity was finally exposed after his death in 2011, meaning his victims never got justice. And in 2016, an independent inquiry chaired by Dame Janet Smith found serious failings and a climate of fear at the BBC that allowed him to get away with it.
Savile was a danger to young people, both girls and boys. These men used their fame and positions as BBC celebrities to abuse the vulnerable.
In the wake of the Savile scandal, the Met Police launched Operation Yewtree in 2012 to investigate historical sex crimes by notable celebrities. But this inadvertently led to one of the BBC's most humiliating moments. In 2014, as Sir Cliff Richard's home was searched as part of this investigation, the broadcaster used a helicopter to film the police raid live and replayed this in the news coverage. Sir Cliff was never arrested or charged and subsequently sued the BBC for invading his privacy. He ultimately received a £2 million payout from the broadcaster in a High Court case. Next, remember this?
Well, there were 3 of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded.
Over 25 years after that bombshell Panorama interview aired in 1995, the BBC finally apologised in 2021 as to how it got the royal scoop. Former BBC journalist Martin Bashir used deceitful methods to gain access to the People's Princess, including allegedly forging documents. And just last year, the corporation issued a public apology. To the now King Charles and Prince William and Harry, Bashir's methods included false claims that the prince's former nanny, Alexandra Pettifer, known as Tiggy Leggy Bork, was having an affair with Charles. It surely doesn't get much worse than that. From upsetting the royal family to a beloved entertainer, and who could forget Russell Brand and Jonathan Ross's lewd prank calls to the late Fawlty Towers star Andrew Sachs. Sachs, who played Manuel in the sitcom, was called by the pair to appear as a guest on Brand's BBC Radio 2 show. But when he didn't answer, the two left a series of answer phone messages, including sexual jokes about Brand's relationship with Sachs' granddaughter. When this interaction was revealed by the Mail on Sunday, it didn't go down so well with the public. The BBC received a record number of complaints. Brand resigned, Ross faced a 12-week suspension, and Ofcom fined the corporation £150,000. Unless you've been living under a rock, you'll know about the row which saw the BBC get a red card. It all started when Match of the Day presenter Gary Lineker tweeted this, where he hit out the government's illegal migration bill. Within 3 days of hitting send on that tweet, the BBC had gone into full meltdown. Lineker was asked to step back from that Saturday's show. Before fellow pundits Ian Wright, Alan Shearer and then all the commentators pulled out in solidarity. It meant a virtually silent 20-minute highlight show for millions watching. And what was the end result? The BBC lost. The corporation apologised to licence fee payers, announced a review of its social media guidelines for presenters, and Lineker was back presenting the following weekend. What was all the fuss about? Listen, let's go straight to the panel to get some reaction. I'd like to start with John Sweeney down the line if I can. John, very simply, and I want to get as many opinions as possible, why have there been so many scandals, it seems, over the years? Is it down to the BBC's bad management, my friend?
No, I think it's partly because the BBC is a fantastic stick that everybody likes to beat, and also it doesn't fire back, partly because it's publicly funded. And so it's a fantastic and easy kicking ball. I looked at all the stuff, and obviously there are some terrible scandals, and there's some storms in a teacup. But essentially, I think the BBC is a good thing, and it helps glue our country together, and it defends our culture in a way that, for example, the American streamers, they don't give a damn about us.
Interesting. Rebecca, would love your take on this. It's supposed to be an impartial public service. We'll talk later about the tweets of Lineker. But when you look at Cliff Richard, right, that jumps out at me. The police tipped off the BBC and they sent a helicopter. They ended up paying out £2 million, damages to him and charges as well because of, obviously, the court costs. When you look at Savile, when you look at Cliff Richard, when you look at Bashir... It's appalling.
It's absolutely appalling. And the thing is, it's the British public that are being forced to pay for this. And they don't want to pay for it. You know, two-thirds of the British public want to get rid of the licence fee. And we're being forced to pay for this mistake after mistake. And it's all very well for him to say the poor BBC is somehow some sort of whipping boy, which is utterly ridiculous. You know, they're in receipt of money from the British taxpayers. And, you know, yeah, they're Teflon, aren't they, essentially? You know, nothing sticks to them. They get away with everything. They've got huge departments of people who are there that are covering their backs. And, yeah, maybe they don't like to respond, but they have a team there protecting themselves and keeping the licence fee going.
Does the BBC, Adrian Mills, hold itself accountable? It would be fair to say that in a lot of organisations you will find things that go wrong.
Yes.
But when you look at that, and that's a light shone in 3 minutes on it. But you know, I mean, if you think of the Jimmy Savile situation, Cliff Richard, Gary Lineker, Russell Brand, you know, Bashir. Yeah. These are major problems.
But these are individuals making this mistake in terms of, say, the Jonathan Ross tweet stuff. I thought that was truly appalling.
When he's allowed back.
He's allowed back. But when you look at Jimmy Savile, I mean, nothing compares to that. That was appalling. But everyone's beating the BBC. But he met the Pope, he met royalty, Nobody actually said, this guy's a pervert, this guy is corrupt. You saw him. I used to see him at the BBC and I think, you're really weird and the hair's all... Yes, I did. Everybody thought, oh, God, isn't he a bit strange? Because he was completely different. Nobody, with the benefit of hindsight, sure, everyone can point the finger now and go, oh, we all knew. No, we didn't. People did not know. And if you think that the BBC employs, I think it's something like 23,000 people, look at organisations around the world. You can't tell me that they haven't got scandals amongst their staff, and it's because the BBC is so high profile. We know the BBC. So anything that comes to light really is, well, as you said there, the spotlight really does hit it.
I mean,